All right, so we're back again, and we're going to continue on our series of how we live the HVACR life. Again, my name is Chris, if you guys don't already know, and this is my wife, Jill, sitting next to me.
Hi.
And we are going to continue. If you haven't already, I would highly suggest that you guys watch the first 2 episodes. They kind of give some context. The first episode's kind of a summary about how this whole series is going to go. The second episode was the last episode we just covered, and I'm going to recap that a little bit right now. But if you pay attention right now, there's a card popping up, and it'll give you a link to the first 2 videos. I would highly suggest, like I said, you guys watch those first, okay? Okay, so we ended the last episode talking about, we made a big decision in our lives, and we found that a move was the right decision for us, inevitably. Jill had been wanting to move for a while, and I was a little reluctant to. But we finally made that decision, and in the end, it was a great decision for us. It changed our lives and it bettered our lives. Okay, but I kind of want to go back before that, and we're going to start into this episode, and I want to cover a couple things that led up just before the move that led to this episode. And in this episode right now, we're going to be talking about some of our medical problems. I have anxiety, some depression issues, and then Jill had some health issues too, and we're going to kind of go into depth in those ones. So to go back, this was really shortly before we moved. There was one incident that really turned the page for me in my head. And I know that it scared you.
Yeah, I think it was the first time I ever, thought I could be scared of you, I guess, in a way.
Okay.
It made me nervous for anything else.
And I sensed that nervousness. Yeah. And I sensed you were afraid. You weren't afraid of me, but I sensed that you were afraid for me. And what happened was Jill was at work one day. I really don't even remember the incident. I don't remember what it was that caused me to do this, but I used to bottle things up. I would never deal with anger. I'm sure there's been a few incidents where, I would break a tool or throw a tool,
A remote.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It wasn't working right, or a keyboard or something.
Yeah, I can remember both of those. Snapping a keyboard in half because the battery was dead, I think, and throwing a remote. I don't know if I threw it at the TV or the wall, but it was a way that I dealt with things. I bottled things up and then I snapped, okay? But this particular incident, what happened was it was the first time I really ever got physical. And I didn't get physical with Jill or my kids or anything, but I punched a wall. And what was really scary for me was it was instant gratification. I was so angry, and I finally let it out, and I punched a hole in the wall. And stupid me, I was extremely lucky that I punched in between the studs, because you don't think about that stuff when you do it. But I punched the wall hard enough that my arm went through the wall. And luckily I didn't hit the stud, because had I hit the stud, I would have busted my knuckles. Okay, really bad, and I wouldn't have been able to work. And gosh, that would have, but I mean, that was where things went with me. I mean, I was afraid that I was going to go to a bad place. Okay. So the incident happened. I punched a hole in the wall. I felt instant gratification, but then I felt instant shame. And I didn't address it. I left it alone. I left the hole in the wall. And then you came home from work. Do you remember coming home from work? And I can't remember how it happened. You said something to me. Do you remember any of that?
Vaguely. I don't remember if I noticed your hand was hurt or there was a hole in the wall. I don't remember, but it maybe was the hole in the wall. And I was like, what happened? And it was in our bedroom.
Yeah.
And I was like, what happened there?
But the way that you asked me, I saw the disappointment when I said I got angry and I punched the wall.
Yeah, I was instantly what? Why? How? I was confused. I was like, that's not you.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you get frustrated with things, but I mean, it was like the remotes or something, but it wasn't.
And the shame that I felt was
so angry.
What really scared me, because it felt so good, guys. It felt so good to punch that wall. But yet, okay, everything goes through my head. I swear it was just a moment in time. And this was when she, asked me about it. And I had that instant regret when I told her I punched the wall, and I could see the disappointment in her eyes. And I could almost see fear too. And again, guys, make it clear. I'm not threatening her. I wasn't threatening the kids, nothing like that.
Never like been angry towards us, but I think at that point it kind of like went through my head, like, what if, like, where could, like, what next kind of thing.
And that's,
like, I mean, I guess it was just getting it was getting kind of progressively.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's what was going through my mind. And again, guys, we're going to lead into some other things with this, but I didn't communicate that to you, but it was going through my mind too. And it was pretty much, guys, that moment that I needed some help. Okay. I didn't know how. Really, I needed to start doing some research. And it took me a couple months of doing some research and calling the insurance company and getting approvals to see mental health person or whatever, right? A psychologist is what I went to go see, I think. Whichever one can prescribe meds. That's what I went to go see. So anyways, I decided to go do that. And we went down that path, okay? But, I decided to see a doctor, and then, but in the meantime, while all that's going on, now we're back at the point that we left the last episode. We decided to make a move, okay? And we moved down the hill, like I told you guys, okay? We lived up in the Victorville area, and we moved down to the Riverside area of California. And I had even more problems. That opened up a lot more stuff with me, okay? And I don't know that I think you sensed some of it, but I don't know if I communicated it all to you. I know that you were super stoked about the move. Like I think in your eyes it was going to fix everything.
I don't necessarily know that I thought it was going to fix everything. I just thought it would make things better. I thought it would make financial and time, and I thought that would take a lot away of like the stress that was going on, but there was like just so much more underlining.
And for me, the move, to add some context, it made me feel like we were going backwards in life, okay? Because while I knew it was going to be better for our family, we owned our home, not outright, but we owned our home and made mortgage payments on it in Victorville, okay? But our home, we couldn't sell our home because we didn't have the right amount of equity in our home. Mind you, we bought our house, like I said, recap in the last episode, just right about the top of the real estate bubble in the 2005-ish range, and then the market crashed, and we still hadn't come back up from that, okay? So, but we had to make the move. So we made the move, but in doing that, what that meant was that we had to find tenants for our home that we owned. We had to rent our home out. And that was hard for me. And then to add insult to injury, we couldn't afford to buy another home while we were still making our other mortgage payment, because those tenants, they weren't making our total mortgage payment. So we were losing money every month. But it was just one of those things. It's just life, right? It's just how it happens. So in order to move down the hill, we were going to have to become renters ourselves. So we still owned a home and we had renters in it. But then we had to move, to move to a better life, we had to rent another home. So we were renting a home from someone else and we became tenants. And all of that, just really kind of bottled everything up, okay? And it was hard for me because I felt like we were going backwards. And
I feel like I felt some of that too, but I remember going into that house, like, and if it wasn't working for us, we were going to move, like, but we didn't really account for the market crashing and all of that stuff and ending up being like stuck in the situation. And we just kind of had to do something to get out of that, which it was out of your comfort zone, my comfort zone. Yeah. I mean, you think about things more than I do, but I just kind of thought of like, okay, having you home more, being closer to everything else. I think it just makes a difference when you don't live your whole life in the city that you live. I don't know. It made a difference.
And everything gets better, okay? But the first morning that I woke up, I literally woke up half an hour, 45 minutes before I needed to be at work. And I wasn't late. I was on time. I wasn't in a rush. And that's when I something popped in my head and made me like think, okay, this is going to be okay, because this was now potentially going to be saving me 3 hours a day by living down here. 3 hours in traffic a day. I was potentially going to take away from my day, and I was going to be home more. After, a little bit of time of living in our new house, I finally made it to go see the doctor after dealing with all the research. I'm a big research person. I don't like to make any decisions, especially big life decisions, without sitting down and thinking about every aspect of it. And I'm sure that has something to do with a little bit of mental disorder that I have, but I really overthink things. I purposely do that. I try to think of every angle, every aspect, what's the best way, all this different stuff. So that way when I go to do something, I don't know what it is. I don't know if I feel like I'm solving. I don't know. I overthink everything. Okay. So after doing a bunch of research and all this different stuff, I finally made it in to see a doctor. Okay. We decided on a course of action. Okay. And when I say we, it was a very much him, the doctor and myself, we discussed things, and he up front asked me, do you want to try treatment with medicine? Do you want to try treatment without medicine? How do you want to do this? So I really did feel comfortable. And do you remember me sharing that stuff with you? I don't know if I shared it or if I just made the decisions to do it.
Yeah, I think you made the decisions, but you told me about it. Like, you had described what the medicine would help you do, and you thought that would be the best way to go because it would delayed kind of the reaction that you would it gave you the time to think about your reaction, and so I think you felt that would help the best because you were...
So, the course of action was essentially, to start off, was 18 months of medication. They put me on an antidepressant, and the way that it was described to me was kind of like what you were describing, okay? And then during that 18 months of medication, I had to see a therapist. I think in the beginning I saw a therapist 2 times a week.
Eventually it was maybe once a month or
maybe
something.
Towards the end, yeah. It petered off. But so the way that it was described to me, and this is just my silly way of understanding, and I could be totally wrong, but the way the doctor said is that the medication wasn't to fix me. Okay, the medication, and this actually makes sense as to what your problems are with my medication too, but the medication slowed my reaction down, essentially. So he described it as, basically when I would get angry, I would have an incident and then I would snap, okay? And what the medication did was it slowed down my reaction time from the point at which I got angry and the point at which I snapped.
So it gave you time to process.
Yeah. And then the therapist was the person that actually fixed me. The medication made me receptive to the therapy, essentially. That's the way I understood it. And the therapist was the one that just uncorked everything and, talked about all of my issues. And the therapist really... I think I knew that I was going to unpack a lot of problems, but the therapist really unpacked a lot of problems. Yeah. And I think I went in there to solve anger issues and realized that
where they stemmed from and how much it helped.
Yeah. And it gave Jill a lot of context too, because, again, I mentioned about sharing things, I think in the last episode, I shared stuff with you, but I don't know, at least just before the move was when I really shared a lot of stuff with you, I think. Do you remember?
A little bit.
Yeah. I think I really, really unpacked a lot of stuff for Jill, but the therapy really unpacked even more. Not saying that therapy is the way to go for everybody, guys, but it worked for me.
And there's a big stigma, though. I think, and we kind of came to that conclusion too while you were going through it, is a lot of our family and our, the older generation, that wasn't a thing, and a lot of people still kind of have apprehension towards going, but it really does help. I think more people could benefit. Yeah, I
distinctly remember having a conversation with my grandfather. I was having a conversation with my grandfather, and I told him that I was going to see a therapist, and I remember my grandmother being happy for me and saying, "That's really good. I'm glad you're doing that." And I remember my grandpa looking at me with a perplexed look and asking me, "Why would you go see a doctor and talk about your feelings?
Talk about your personal stuff to other people," type of thing. You just keep it to yourself. That's just the way that it was. And a lot of people live like that, and it builds up. So
yeah, and I mean, to each their own. Again, right. Not saying this is just what worked for us, right? Okay, so but at the same time. While I was on the medicine, actually I shouldn't say at the same time, but while I was on the medicine, it led to some side effects. And, we joke and say that, you thought that was the year that I slept for a year. Pretty much.
Not just thought. I'm just kidding. Basically, any time you weren't working, you were napping. And those naps weren't half an hour. They were 4 to 6 hours.
Yeah.
So it was pretty frustrating. So I guess I'm a very patient person, so that probably helps. I mean, I got, short and irritated here and there because I don't know, I kind of was trying to let you go through what you needed to go through, and so I didn't need to bring, more issues or more frustrations your way because, it was just something you were going through. And, I think I understand, I mean, as hard as it was to try to get through that, I understand. So
And I think that, I mean, I was still aware. It wasn't like I was numb and oblivious to everything. It's just that when I had any downtime,
You were tired.
it was
You
nap
realized
time.
you realized you were just tired. But I think it like had a lot to do with the medicine, how it like affects your brain and
It
stuff.
kind of
and
seemed like it put me into a depression almost. It's almost
Yeah.
like it was part of the medicine. Like it put me into that depression and just,
yeah,
had to work things out,
so it was an interesting time because I'd be wanting to go do stuff with you now that we had you home more, but it just kind of seemed like I was still just finding things for me and the girls to do
Yeah.
a lot. But
And right at
things
that
change.
time, too, was when you were starting to really discover your health problems.
Well, and I was like, I got put on the thyroid medication, and then that like was bouncing my hormones around and my stuff. So I kind of felt like there'd be times where like I was more angry, and then there'd be more times that I was like, upset and emotional, and then sometimes that I was just like whatever, and just kind of getting through my day, but not putting more on you.
Yeah.
So
And so you were diagnosed with hypothyroidism. At first, it was just hypothyroidism. It was kind of a
Yeah.
vague diagnosis.
Yeah, it was like they test your TSH levels, and my TSH levels were low. So it's all kind of a little technical, but the doctor told me, oh, you have to start this levothyroxine right away, like to start feeling your normal self, and blood tests came along with that, and those are not my easiest thing to do. I'm not very good with that at all, so I wasn't looking forward to the process of trying to get that figured out, but I knew that I just didn't want to be tired anymore, so I was willing to do what I needed to do for that. So I went ahead and started medicine, and then kind of like with Chris's, I don't know, whenever what he does, it's like I kind of started researching and like, what can I do in order to like make myself better at the same time? Like, why do you get this? Like, what I can do.
You had like it was food allergies was really started coming out.
Yeah, like it was a couple years like into the thyroid, like having the thyroid issues. I started like having like breaking out in rashes, random rashes underneath my neck. It was from medicine or food. I didn't really know what it was. So I went and ended up seeing an allergist, and he tied my hypothyroidism into one of the tests, and it showed that I had Hashimoto's, which is, I guess they say, where your immune system is attacking itself. And then further on to more research to see if I can get that under control. And yeah, it's just kind of like balancing out. And
then in the midst of that was the gluten intolerance too.
well, they say, because like, I mean, the doctors don't technically say that it's a gluten intolerance, but through your own research and like a lot of the pages and people that I follow for information, they, said that's the best way to go to help correct that. And it's worked for me, even though I'll tell the doctors that I've gone that route, and they said, well, just listen to your body. If that's what makes you feel better, then that's fine. And so it's not really like a, yes, you have to do this, but it's really what's been a good balance between the medicine and my like dietary lifestyle. It's kind of a little
and I've noticed,
hard,
since you've kind of gotten a hold on the medication, and it's taken a long time, guys, and to
6
go off on a
years
thing,
in, 7 years.
and you're still tweaking numbers and playing with
still
things,
playing with stuff.
and seasonal things change. It's a trip. But what's also, and I'm not gonna knock the doctors because the doctors have helped, but at the same time, it's also interesting when you're going through a problem like the thyroid issue that she's going through, is that especially when you get to some of the older doctors, like they have some old school methods of just like, oh, that's normal, and oh, that's not a symptom, when in all reality some of those things were screaming symptoms.
Well, and a lot of the times they say like hypothyroidism can go undiagnosed, and you can get diagnosed with like all sorts of other issues. And so that's why I try to bring to my doctors like, is this under, falling under the hypothyroidism issue? And they're like, well, there's not enough evidence, or something to say. But a lot of people will get diagnosed with depression or anxiety or like fatigue syndrome, and like all these different things you can like go around, and then it ends up being your thyroid. So Like I've been told, like my mom has told me, like doctors will teach or they'll do what they know as like what they've been through too. So like, some doctors don't automatically treat with medicine, and some doctors don't find it. So it's just kind of getting through it. But now that I've been on medication, I've learned that my body does not do well if I get off of the medication. So it's just a balance of the medication and my dietary lifestyle and trying to keep my stress under control, which is, hard to do being an adult and a parent and a wife. And so dietary changes really helped get my hypothyroidism under control as well as taking the medicine. And I also learned, I wanted to mention that caffeine, even though I was tired a lot, I realized that I was over caffeinating myself, which was not helping in the least. So like realizing and limiting my caffeine intake, I realized I maybe wasn't as tired as I kept thinking I was. And I wasn't drinking enough water. And so yeah, just big things, seeing your doctor, following through, and just listening to your body and what works, and limiting stress. Those.
And guys, I didn't understand what hypothyroidism was like.
Yeah.
And to give all fairness too, I wasn't fair to you because it's not that I didn't believe you, but I don't know.
It's because it's one of those things where, there's a lot of people that deal with stuff that you don't see. You can't really see it on the outside. And then like you're with me all the time, so you don't really realize like if I'm looking tired or if I'm looking different. It's like that whole process when I went off the medicine.
That's
and
right.
Like I felt and looked terrible, and like you wouldn't know, like you didn't really notice. But then like I would see your dad, and he was like, "Are you sure you're okay?" Because like you basically, trying to be nice, telling me I look terrible.
And it wasn't that in that particular incident, guys.
Yeah.
To give context, long story short, the doctor took her off of her medicine. She wanted to be off.
I asked because I thought that everything that I had done, besides just taking the medicine, that I could be fine. And I learned the hard way that my body was like, nope. You have to have this, like it doesn't produce the right amount on its own. So I was basically falling apart, and
that was not a good incident because
it was terrible, and it took me.
We got a rude awakening when she called me from the doctor's office and said that you were 2 steps away from going to the emergency room.
Yeah,
and
like everything was starting to shut down, and it was scary. And it's taken me about a year to get back to feeling as good as I did before I stopped taking the medicine then. So it's been a process, but I guess patience and working through and talking about stuff in life. Like I always have you to talk to, and even if you're not listening, sometimes it's still just good for me to say it out loud.
It's selective hearing, guys. I'm listening. Okay. All right. At this point, I finished the course like the doctor had recommended. It was pretty much, I think it was spot on with 18 months.
Yeah, you were ready. I feel like you were ready to, you'd weaned off like the dosage of your medicine and stuff too. And you felt pretty good about like not having to go back to the therapist and like talk about issues. Like you feel like you were, I feel like you worked.
Yeah, but I followed their course.
Yeah, you didn't just stop.
I didn't
like
stop.
2 months and being like, no, I don't need this. Like you just were like, okay, I gotta go.
Yeah, and it was hard for me, guys, because I did not want to take the medicine in the beginning, but I decided to go down that path. I decided to listen to the doctor, and I did what they needed to do. And for me, it worked. It helped. Okay, it just it was hard. In the meantime, while all that was going on, while her medical problems were going on, well, hers are still going on. Mine's still there, but I'm not seeing the doctor anymore. I'm not on medicine anymore. But normal life was happening, guys. We were busy as ever with my work. You were working a night job as a waitress, pretty much off and on that whole time. The move, everything. She was still working. Our kids were going to school. Our oldest daughter was in school. Our youngest daughter around that time was just starting school. And we were kind of dealing with everything. I mean, we were stressed physically, mentally, physically, because of health problems. Financial was a huge thing for us. Financial was a whole nother aspect.
It was a huge stress on us.
And so talking with a family member of mine, she had always been talking about Dave Ramsey and his Financial Peace University. And right at that time was when I really started listening to podcasts too. And I remember I found Dave Ramsey's podcast and I started listening to his podcast, and then I started watching his YouTube videos too.
Yeah.
I would watch his YouTube videos. And I was really starting to think about the Dave Ramsey stuff. And I mean, some of his methods seemed a little out of whack. Like they seemed extreme, like crazy extreme. If you follow verbatim, it's insane. But, I really was starting to think about that. And then you had a friend.
Yeah. Well, like we both too, I think even years before, like we had somebody that had mentioned it and we had no idea. And then, a few years later it comes up again. And then I had another friend that was like in the process of following pretty much everything to a T that Dave Ramsey like says to do. And I thought, like the same thing, like that's pretty extreme. But like at the same time, it's like terrible to have such financial like stresses, and it like creates other problems in your marriage and frustrations. And it's like when stuff comes to it and you don't have money to, when Christmas comes up and you're like, how are we going to pay for all this stuff? It was just like we were tired of like not knowing or being stressed or not trying not to overspend. So we knew we needed to like do something, and we were both like really leaning. I think you were like, okay, we're going to download the book.
Yeah, I bought the book.
Listening.
I actually have it right here. She went and dug it out of her thing right there, but it's the Financial Peace University, Financial Peace Revisited. And I'll actually link this down in the notes because guys, if you guys are looking to go that route, if you want to deal with financial issues, I highly suggest this, okay?
And
like I said, I'll link it down in the notes of the video.
We'll get into it more, but we started to like pay attention to like what was coming financially, what was coming in, and financially what we were spending out, and putting aside money for holidays, for gifts, for activities. And it just really started to make sense, and we stopped spending the senseless money that you just don't think about. So I know we'll get into that more.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do an episode.
Time,
definitely.
It really did help. And I think that as well as like moving here and just like all the little changes that we have made between like doing our health problems and our financial problems and different stuff, it's really kind of brought more of a sense of calm.
Yeah,
a little bit,
I guess.
like amongst all the crazy a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't feel as it's piled on as much as it was.
While we were living this period of our lives, it's not like we didn't hate life.
Yeah, it just kind of feels like it's normal, like it's something that everybody goes through. Like
that was something that we thought a lot, was that it was normal, and it was all small little things. And I mean, so what I'm trying to say is this all happened, and it wasn't like, her health problems, it started out as little things. And at first it was hard for us to realize that there was all one big problem with your health problems. And the same thing with our life, my problems, it was just a little bit of everything. We were dealing with stress, we were dealing with health problems, and it was just all kind of happening. But, it seemed normal to us.
Yeah,
I guess
it seems normal. I mean, some days they get more, they're stressful than, more stressful than others, but
guys, where we're going with this, I mean, the whole point of why we're doing this video is because we want to express, or we want to make other people that might be going through similar issues realize that it's not just them. We've said that before. I think we said that on the last episode. Okay. That period of our lives, it's still going on, but I mean, it was just kind of a stepping stone. It was, it took time to get through the process. We didn't hate life. It was just things were stressful.
Kind of, adjusting, and
it kind of seemed normal. Like I already said that a minute ago, there's not a fairy tale ending to this. Okay. It's not like we read the Dave Ramsey book and everything was fixed. It's not like you went to the doctor and life is peachy. I went to see a therapist. It didn't fix everything. Okay. We still have struggles.
still work through it all. I mean, you still work just, you still work just as much, but you're home a little bit more. We
I still
closer
have,
and, but yeah, you still have really long days, and then there's still a lot of days where we kind of just pass each other by, but then there's days where we get to spend the whole day. So,
yeah, I still bottle things up. I still bottle things up. I try not to as much. I try to let things out a little bit more. I haven't fixed everything. You still have, you still get too cold sometimes. You still get too hot sometimes. We joke that it's women's winter, right? Because
keep the house too cold.
Yeah, I have the air conditioner set at 74. It's 90 degrees outside, and she's sitting on a sweater right now because she's cold. Yeah. So, Jill's health problems, they're never going to go away. Okay, my health problems, medicine didn't fix everything. I still have anxiety. I still have anger issues. It doesn't go away. In my eyes, we just learn how to cope with it.
Yeah, and I think the important thing is that we've recognized these things and we haven't let them go unnoticed and untaken care of. And so that helps create like a better relationship for us, like together.
I think that
we're willing to work and willing to change to make us feel better. And
And I think that much to your dismay, I think that you've kind of come to terms with the fact that you're pretty much going to have to take medicine for the rest of your life. In one way or another.
Yeah, unless they come out with like some, super cool technology in the future. Just kidding.
All right, guys. So we're going to wrap this one up. We are going to do another episode soon. We got a couple other things we want to cover. We definitely want to go into the financial stuff. We want to talk about what the Dave Ramsey, what we did, what worked for us. Okay. Like I said, I'll put a link to the book that helped us in the show notes. And I just want to say thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video and this series, okay? I've gotten lots of great support from you guys. I do see the comments. And remember that I read every single comment. So whatever you guys leave, I'll try to respond to it, okay? I really appreciate it. I guess that's just going to be it for this one. And we will see you guys on the next one, okay?
Bye.